Okay. So last week we began our discussion with the first part of analysis of what does the Rambam mean by the Milchmot Mashiach, which you explained before that the interpretation is that these Milchmot Mashiach occur even before he has revealed himself totally as Mashiach. In other words, what's happening now? And we began with the Aza fire, because Aza is vaguely both, right? It's the crux, it's the nucleus, it's the fulcrum of everything, all the wars that are happening in the earth. And of course, it constitutes our greatest opposition. We spoke about that at length last week. We looked at the Yalkut Shimoni, which explains that the Mashiach appears at the time when you'll find that the nations of the earth are at war one with another, and as explained before, the king of Persia invades another Arab king. The other Arab king goes to the king of Aram. Iraq invades Kuwait. Kuwait goes to the States. It talks about the ensuing war, and then it says that Mashiach, his voice is heard from abroad, saying, "Do not be afraid, my humble ones, the time of your redemption has come." And actually, there's something else that he says, which is interesting, right? Now it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's words to the Jewish people, right? I want my children know that everything I'm doing now, it's for you. As much as we look at it, right, as a threat to our survival, and we're afraid, but it's for us, it's all for us. The whole story is for us. Okay. So we got to that. And then we began to talk, when we talked about the Aza class, so we looked at the first real reference, story about Aza from the Torah, which we find in that of Abraham Avinu and later Yitzhak. But the focus is on Yitzhak and how Yitzhak dug wells. And it begins with a very simple statement, which says that Vayachor Avdei Yitzchak v'nachal v'yimsa'u sham mayim. Now, remember, we talked about that last week too, but very, very shortly, that he had been living in Eretz of Plishtim. The king there was Avimelech. Avimelech sees, though, that 1 year, wow, there's an explosion in his backyard. His fields yield 100 times the regular yield of the crops there. He said, now the time is to go by. He shows him the door. And where does he go? He goes to a place that's called Nachal Gra, the Valley of Gra. I told you last week something very interesting about that whole place, that the whole place it's still a vacation spot. It was a vacation spot until the war, because it's the only fecund and beautiful place in Gaza. Okay, so anyway, but this statement that he dug wells in the valley and he found there water, he dug 3 wells, we understand that in its depths, it's not just talking about, it's talking about something else altogether. Actually, it's a very mundane statement. As Rambam took us into this. Rambam is the one who reveals this to us. It's very mundane. What is it? Does it honor him? Is it a great feat and task? No, rather, he says there's a great secret here, and the secret is that these words are a template for the building of the Beit Hamikdash, and the way that he digs them and the names that he gives them are indications of not just contained in one word exactly what happens in that one word with the building, construction, and of the first and second and third Beit Hamikdash. Okay, then so we have to understand and we explain why, right? Because a well of living water, moreover, is the appellation that Yirmiyahu gives for the Beit HaMikdash. What it says that he found it, that's exactly what Yirmiyahu calls the Beit HaMikdash, a well of living water, which connotes 2 sides to the Beit HaMikdash. Right? 2 sides to it. 2 sides, as it were, in its construction. It is coming into being. On one hand, it's a well. There's a human effort here to dig the well. On the other side, once the well reaches the water table, water spurts up. So that's something from Hashem. That's something from the nature of the world. The same thing with the Beit Mikdash, where it's right. What's the first statement that the Kodesh Baruch Hu makes about the Beit Mikdash in Pashat Shuma, the Mishkan and the Beit Mikdash? V'asuli Mishkan v'shachanti v'tocham. Dig the well, right? And I'm coming in. I, the living waters, right? So we learned that. Then we went to now a sicha, in the same sicha, which we've been actually speaking about now in short. We spoke about the first Beit Mikdash. I think we haven't spoken yet about the second Beit Mikdash. So now we're going to open up. If you have a copy, again, with your permission, let me follow the Hebrew only because I'm more familiar with it, and it somehow works better for me. Okay. But if there's a problem, if there's some kind of a conflict, so I sure will. So we are at a moment. We are on the sixth section, section 6. I know. I don't think it's page 6. It doesn't go like that. The 6. It's going to begin about the second Beit Mikdash here. It's the 6th section. 1 second. Page 6.
In this definition of the temple,
right.
It was just opposite.
All right. Okay.
And the definition of
all right. Okay. So the word here used to be is gather. Gather means what has to be included in the Beit Mikdash, not other things that probably may occur, not occur. The interesting things are side issues, but this is what delineates the Beit Mikdash. And we saw before that part of it is that it necessitates the effort, the activity of man. And in terms of the second Beit Mikdash, there's a sudden increment in what is demanded from the Jews in order to build it. By the way, I want to tell you something interesting. I can't let it go. When we talked about the first Beit Mikdash last week, right? And we said that actually Shlomo received the plans from David. I don't know if I told you, but David received the plans from Shmuel. Shmuel received the plans from Eli HaKohen. Eli HaKohen received the plans from from Yoshua. Pinchas from Yoshua. Yehoshua from Moshe were from Har Sinai. It was called the Megillat HaMikdash.
Wow, where's that?
Right. That's a Yerushalmi, if I'm not mistaken. But it wasn't so simple. You take those blueprints, you can understand one thing. We can imagine. Now, how did David writes openly, I got it all in writing, and I'm giving it to you. This is the first time you see really how the plans and blueprints are transferred from one generation to another. But when did that happen? It's a very interesting story. If you recall, the end of Perek the 19th chapter in Shmuel Aleph, David runs away from Shaul. It's evident that he wants to do away with him, to say it nicely. And what does he go? He runs and runs and runs, and he goes from Giv'ah to a place called Nayot Ramah. Now, what's Ramah? You know what Ramah is? Ramah is Ramot, where Shmuel and Levi is buried. Right. There he was born, there he died, and there he taught. There he taught. And in that night, when he's running for his life, he's a fugitive, right? He learns, Shmuel teaches him how to build the Beit Mikdash. this is the first time that he's really giving he's conveying in order to build it. It says, Rashi says, that what he taught him in a few hours would take a Talmid Chacham, and not Talmid Chacham of today, which is mamash minor, right? It would have taken him 100 years to learn.
Wow.
100 years to learn, and they learned in a few hours. And of course, for Shlomo, that was no problem either. So that's how, in other words, we were talking about the effort that was made that went into the first Beit Mikdash, that you had to, first of all, know about it, and Haka. We explained how David found it. Okay, but let's go to the second Beit Mikdash. So the Rebbe brings here now 2 points. Number one, that the actual construction of the Beit Mikdash didn't come about because of a divine revelation, as it had, for instance, with the Mishkan, right? Moshe Rabbeinu saw it actually, or by means of an order, of a command coming from a Navi, as it was in the first Beit Mikdash. God tells him, now you build the Beit Mikdash. Shmuel tells him how to build the Beit Mikdash. But it came by, how did it happen? Who ordered the second Beit Mikdash to be built? From far away, Koresh, a non-Jew. He's right. He's the instigator. Koresh.
Son of Esther, right?
Koresh was Daryavesh. I think Daryavesh was the son of Esther. No, he was a couple of generations before. This is 18 years before the Jews actually came en masse, and it was and Koresh was then the king, a very good king. Mm-hmm. You can read about him in Israel. And he ordered the Beit Mikdash, and not only that, but as a matter of fact, he ordered his whole kingdom to take part and to participate, to donate. Amazing.
Was he Jewish?
No.
It was that he was the debate.
But because he was a smart guy. He remembered, he got the message, understand? He was not like the Iranians now, that, you know what I mean? We are not doing it. We don't give up. But he was a smart guy and a good guy, right? Anyway, let's go back to the story. So he sets it in motion. That's number one. And number two, the formation, the form, the actual structure was not clear. We those of us that learn the Rambam, the Rambam always makes that a point. When the people came back to build the second temple, of course they had the plans in Malachim. Did you ever see the plans in Malachim? Did you ever see the plans in the Beit Mikdash? It's a skeleton. You can't really understand anything. It's a blueprint of a blueprint of a blueprint. It's very sketchy. So how could they understand it? But they knew there was so many details, and that had been conveyed. So what had happened is that 7 years have passed, 7 years of the exile. And even there were people who had been present 7 years ago. And there were some things that they simply did not remember. How could that be? Huh? But they didn't remember him. On the other hand, they knew that the future Beit Mikdash, the one that will, we call the third Beit Mikdash, had already been presented to Yecheskel, right? Yecheskel has sure. In Yecheskel, you see over a few chapters, he discusses, he delineates, with precision how it's about to be built, but still that was not enough for them. Something that was missing. So when they built the second Beit Mikdash, there was a lot of confusion about it, right? And they turned upon memory, what's written in Malachim, what they recalled, and that's what he's saying here. So those are two of the problems that they had. Now, outside of that, it's not written here. I want to tell you a few other problems that they had with the second Beit Mikdash. So they didn't have the first Beit Mikdash. Okay, it wasn't just a question of the technology here, and it was a question also of the state of the people. In the time of Shlomo HaMelech, right, the Jews had arrived at a very high state of spirituality under David HaMelech. Here, they were coming back from Babel. Number one, very few. Not all the Jews came back from Babel. For instance, the Yemenites didn't come back, as they say. They were in Israel at the time of the second Beit Medrash, not to speak of the 10 tribes. That's number one. Number two, they were poor. They were poverty-stricken. Number three, they had the problem of assimilation. Even the Kohanim had married what they call Gentile wives, which they weren't Gentiles, but the conversion didn't really render them very Jewish, is the point. So they were up against many, many problems. And therefore we see in the second Beit Mikdash that the idea of your inquiry into it, because remember what is written in the Midrash, you have to inquire and find it for yourself. It's amazing. In the book of Moshe, there's no mention of Yerushalayim. Where is that place that you want us to take korbanot? Where is that place that you want us to serve a kodesh baruch? Where is that place that you want us to celebrate in front of Hashem? It's not written there. So that's why Sifei comes and says, why? Because it's incumbent upon the Jewish people to search, to find, to inquire. Right? This is the greatest. Here now is the culmination of the Jewish service to our Kodesh Baruch Hu, that they're able through their efforts to create a dwelling place for our Kodesh Baruch Hu on earth. So it's not a simple thing, obviously, right? It's not natural. It's to operate against nature. And therefore we see the second Beit HaMikdash, that this idea of the inquiry was far greater than that of the first Beit HaMikdash. Inquiry into all the details of how it was to be constructed. It was far harder for them than in the first Beit HaMikdash. And also in terms of the place, how do they find? How do they know where to build Beit Mikdash exactly? It has to be exact. What has to be the most exact point in the Beit Mikdash? No. המזבח. המזבח הוא מובן ביותר. המזבח. Because on that. Why you would think, right? Well, after you know where that is, so you know where the Kodesh Kodeshim is, because you want to place it exactly on the place where Adam HaRishon was created, where Noah offered his offerings, right? Where Avraham Avinu went to offer up his son. It has to be a makom mechuban. That's the mizbeach. That's the mizbeach. Mm-hmm. And also that conforms to what the Rambam says about how do you see, what's the Beit HaMikdash? Is a Beit HaMikdash the place where you go into the Beit HaMikdash, like we said before? Friends, they weren't looking at the aperture. They weren't looking at the apertures, at the construction, at the what should I say, at the gold, at the silver. Once they went in there, they entered now into Seder Hishtalshalut. You know what that means? Seder Hishtalshalut, it means the downward progression of worlds. In other words, you go in there, and according to your spiritual height and level, you can see into the upper worlds. They see godliness to the point where the very essence of godliness was, in a sense, revealed there. You understand? So here I just lost track of myself, but I'll get back to myself. But in any case, this is what you see in the Beit Mikdash, and so obviously this is a tremendous undertaking, as we said before. Let's go back to what we said before. Now I know why we're talking about the Mizbeach, so why it had to be exact, because even though that's true of the Beit Mikdash, that there was an incredible revelation of godliness in the Beit Mikdash as it's elucidated in many, many places. Still, the Beit HaMikdash is a place, according to the Rambam. Again, Rambam's the only posek. What does the Rambam say about it? It's the place where we're going to go 3 times a year and offer to Kodesh Baruch. We have to appear 3 times a year, the men at least, and we offer korbanot. In other words, the Rambam sees it as a place where the Jews serve a Kodesh Baruch Hu, right? In the ultimate fashion. So if so, it stands to reason it's going to be on that same place where from time immemorial, not just Adam HaRishon himself was created there, but where the Jews served the Kodesh Baruch Hu, and the great and we know the impact, for instance, of the Akedah, of the offering of Yitzhak, etc. So that's why. Okay, so that's it.
Aren't they all the same place? Har Moriah and no?
They're all on the Mizbeach. Where that Mizbeach, that's why David.
It's also they're all the same.
Of course
place.
it is. Of course it's. But by the way, when we looked at the first Beit Knesset, the same thing happened. When David, after suffering, suffering tremendously. Anyone? No, if we make a mistake and we hurt somebody else, it grieves us to a point, right? But David makes a mistake, right? And we said before that it includes all 70,000 people died because of him, and he's anguished. And he loses his direction totally. And then because of this, what does he see? The angel standing on the threshing floor of Arvana. And he's saying to him, here's the altar, right? So the altar is a makom most precise location in the Beit Mikdash.
So my question is they're all in the same place?
Of course, yeah. The Beit Mikdash.
But it's all the same nikuda mamash.
No.
We learned it in the
unfortunately, I didn't read. No. The Mizbeach was outside of the Mikdash. When you call Mikdash, or the Heichal, okay? Mm-hmm. The Mikdash includes the Heichal, the private building, the courtyard around it. That's the Mikdash. Then the courtyards outside, which are also, right, the women's courtyard, et cetera. But you find the altar is outside of that building. So the altar is outside, and inside the building, the Heichal is, first of all, the Kodesh, and after that, the holiest place, Kodesh Kodeshim. Okay? Which exactly, and where did the Aron of Brit sit? Where did it sit? On what? Even Ashtiyah. On the place that the world was built. So you have in a very, very close quarters, the place where the world began, right? Even according to physics today, it began all in one point, as it were. And then you also have very close to the place where Adam Rishon was created. Okay, it's all the Beit Mikdash. Anyway, to go back to the second Beit Mikdash, okay? So because they had numerous problems, and okay, however, let's go on. And because the idea of the permanence of the structure, not necessarily the glory, the kedusha of the structure, but the permanence of the structure is dependent on the fact that we have put our effort to us, who hold it down on the earth, right? So, as it says, asuli mikdash, in a way that the Jewish people work and make an effort, a tireless effort. And this we see more incorporated into the Beit HaMikdash, the second Beit HaMikdash, than the first Beit HaMikdash. There was far more effort put into it. They were far more involved, they were far more invested in it. Well, first Beit HaMikdash, right? It's hard. I'm just digressing a bit, okay? Even though we see that there are 183,000 people that worked on the first Beit HaMikdash, the fact of the matter is that it's written at the working site of the first Beit HaMikdash, that they didn't hear it wasn't the sound of hammers or chiseling. You know why? Because they were all flown in. All the boulders were flown in to the Beit HaMikdash, put in place by the Shamir. So by the Shamir. The boulders. All the stones. Okay, so now we understand there's a big difference here, right? There's another thing in the second Beit HaMikdash. What?
Where's that saying?
The Midrash. Midrash talks about, because the Midrash on the pasuk that says no, you couldn't hear the sound of implements on the building site. The building site was silent. No, don't worry. The Midrash knows what they're talking about. You don't have to worry.
Doesn't mean to take it literally.
Yeah, it takes me. It's literally.
Sometimes
I can't imagine what the world of the first Beit HaMikdash. We won't go into that now, okay? And another thing about the second Beit HaMikdash, don't forget also the level of revelation is far lower than it was in the first Beit HaMikdash, right? Because 5 things were missing. Okay. So let's go on. But what did it have? It had staying power. How long did the second Beit Mikdash last? 420 years, right? How did first Beit Mikdash last? 410 years. 410 years. And which was bigger?
The second.
The second. The first one was probably more glorious, perhaps, but the second one was bigger, and it said it was beautiful also. You could see it, and you saw it from afar, it looked like the sea. Why? Because of the human effort that was made.
Because of what?
The human effort. In other words, instead of its structure, it's physical reality, right? It's much sturdier and bigger and more beautiful than the first Beit Mikdash. Okay. Now, so according to this, it's understood that the siman. Okay. According to this, it's understand that the siman banim, the sign to the sons, the sign to the children. We said, right? We talked about the both that, especially their actions are a sign. We explained before, a sign doesn't mean just an indication, like a signpost, or but it means that something's going to force us. It forces us. It forces us to follow the same path. The sign has force. The sign determines, and therefore, because he built these two kind of wells, call him what he did. So that's what we see. That's what we see appear in reality, embellished in reality in the three Beit Mikdash.
So that he knew that? It was his kavanah?
Everything he did. Good question. I'll tell you what, it's a good question. Because we're going to find out, we're going to meet with God's help today. We're going to meet up with the patriarchs again. But the patriarchs never had one thought. They never uttered one word or performed one action, except that it was totally aligned with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, they were sort of like, you could say, they weren't puppets, right? It's just that the greatness of their soul was that they totally mirrored the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu every single second. So how we're talking about what we can understand, right? This is just touching the surface of what's really happening here, obviously. Okay, so when he's building the wells, obviously, yes, we kind of obviously he knows this, and obviously this is covenant, right? Okay. So here he talks about in the next passage, he talks about the fact that that the digging of the be'orot, actually the digging of the wells, right, is something we see also, that phenomenon we see in the life of Avraham, but it's not really it's not it isn't featured there. It's not important there, which is, however, and where do we find, because Avram dug the same wells, Yitzhak dug, and call them these names. So why in Avraham is it not mentioned, but what in Yitzhak? And this the Rebbe is going to explain now, because the idea here, the Torah wants to explain to us, wants to stress the point of the exertion and the work, the labor, exertion, labor, work is related to what divine trait? Service. Gevurah, right. And who's Gevurah? Yitzhak, that's it, right? So that's his whole personality, So, right? To dig into reality, to dig into the consciousness, not to be, he's not satisfied with something superficial. And so therefore it's dafka him of all the three avot, right? Who shows us, who manifests to us by the means of digging what is going to be in the future time, how the Jews are going to construct the Beit Mikdash. And the Rebbe points out at the end here that this service is a service. It's like the service of Gevurah is what for instance, the Beit Mikdash goes what? The korbanot, or the service of tefillah, where a person has to lift himself up to the Kodesh Baruch. He's not just drawing down light as you do in Torah. When you learn Torah, there's no problem, right? No problem to learn Torah or getting light from above. And even we perform mitzvot, those are the actions the Kadosh Baruch Hu told us to do. But when you come to daven, which in davening now is today, the modern korban, that's where we meet ourselves. That's where it's difficult. That's where we have to dig into ourselves to find our connection with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, so from here now we're going to leave this. We're not going to the third section, which is about our service now. We'll leave until we finish our discussion about what's going on, particularly in Gaza. Okay, so for that, now my friend who gave me this translation of the Sikha tried 3 times yesterday to translate this one sheet of Kabbalah from the work of the father of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who was Reb Levi Yitzchok. And one, I don't know what happened. The page was indicated, the book was indicated, the link was there, and something else came out 3 times, as if something was saying, I don't want to be translated. But I did bring some copies in Hebrew. So if there's anybody who wants to follow, what's that? Some from a different book, from a different page, we couldn't get it. Every time something different came out, it's in my phone here. I do have here, if there are a few people that want it, but share it, because I don't have many copies. This is what I had at home. Okay, any questions till now? No questions. Good. Okay. So this is what we're getting to. But before we begin here, I want to introduce our hero, Shimshon HaGibor. Right? Okay. Shimshon. Story of Shimshon. Shimshon was the 12th of the 14 or 15 of what they call the judges, the Shoftim. The Shoftim who directed the Jewish people. They weren't kings. They had some rights of Malchut, but not all. And they judged the people between the era of Yehoshua, Ben Nun, the first 28 years when the Jews were in the country, and between that and the period that began with Shmuel and Nevi, which is a period of Nevi'im, the period of now the beginning of the construction of Malchut with Shmuel Levi. That's what he's born into, is to begin the process of bringing the godly reign into to Eretz Yisrael. Okay, and there was so in order to know a little bit about Shimshon, I want to first I'm first going to take you to a passage that we read in Pashat Vayechi. This is probably the best introduction for him. The first introduction will be where he's first mentioned. Where is he first mentioned? In the end of
Yeshayahu. Yehoshua. It's right about his birth.
even earlier. Even earlier. Where? Okay. He's the subject of Yaakov Avinu's bracha. Everything is really talking about him. Dan, right? Exactly. In other words, Yaakov Avinu, right? He has Ruach HaKodesh prophecy. He's giving out the brachot to other shvatim, right? Right? Explaining to them what their work is going to be, what their good points are, what their weak points are, their strong points are. And what he says about Dan is all he's talking about, mainly Shimshon. Okay, let's read the number. Okay, if you don't have, there aren't any Tanachim? Tanach.
Yeah, there's one.
Never mind. Just for next time, okay? Because it's so nice to see where it's written. Okay, so we're going to go now to Pashat Vayechi at the end, when Yaakov is prophesying to all the tribes, and he says like this. We're in the 49th chapter and the 16th You can also find your phones. And also the 16th verse. Dan Yadin Amo Ke'echad Shiftei Yisrael. Dan, his name is Dan, from Dinim, right? From Dinim. Dan will judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Thank you. What does that say? No. It means that Dan will judge the Jewish people, Shimshon, will judge the Jewish people in such a superlative manner, in such a perfect way, that it's as if HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself was sitting in the place of judgment here, which is not said about any other judge. Even though Shmuel is considered to be the greatest of judges, but that's something else. But in the perfection of his jurisprudence, he judges like HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, let's first Shimshon.
That doesn't mean also. We know about Shimshon as opposed.
Go ahead.
We know about Shimshon as opposed to other Shoftim that he did it all by himself. Him as a Hajj.
No, right. No, that's not the reference here. We're going to go. That's in the Gemara. We'll get to that in a moment. Okay, that's number one. Okay,
I mean, Dan, the name of the tribe, Dan, is all about judgment. So besides Hashem, they're going to be the most righteous.
He fell into the right. But that's not the point. The point is he himself. If you look at Dan and other things they've done, they weren't so prudent in their judgment. Correct? Okay. Second. Vihi Dan Nachash Alei Derech Shififon Alei Orach Hanoshech Ikvei Sus. Okay, the second one, we're just going to be the bin. We see that he's talked about being like he's a Nachash, right? He's like a snake. Find the meaning of that too. He really comes, what his main purpose here is now, really, he comes to correct really Chet Etzadat. All right? Kim. But shififon, what's a shififon? It's also kind of a snake. The word shefi means somebody who is somebody. No, that's his slithers. No, but it's someone who's like a cripple. He's crippled, but he's crippled in both legs. Shimshon was crippled in both legs, so he had to pull himself, right, with the tremendous exertion. And the reason for that being, by the way, I can tell you one thing, is because we're going to meet, when you understand, everybody knows something about Shimshon, this is a character that doesn't really fit into the stringencies of halakha, we can say, right? Because he had so much light, incredible light, but he didn't have the kelim. So that his legs are the kelim, the legs bear us. So he really couldn't make it in this world because there was something missing in his connection to the earth. Couldn't really tread upon it. All right. Now, the most beautiful thing is what is said at the end. Vishuatcha kiviti havaya. Does that ring a bell with us? When do we say that? 3 times a day? No, I'm going to Vishuati kiviti Hashem. Yeshuati kiviti kol hayom. It's written in. We say that in the Amidah every day. Sure, but no, it's in Shmona Esrei. But what's it doing here? Suddenly, out of the blue, Yaakov Avinu is beseeching the help of a Kodesh, not the help of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. I have faith in you. What happened? In the midst of his prophecy, he sees Shimshon, the Gibor Agadol of the greatest, obviously, the greatest, the strongest of any man that ever lived, had phenomenal strength, not just physical strength, but also strength of character. As you said before, he never once asked anyone for help. All of it was a one-man mission, a one-man army. Right? He sees this man with his incredible nefesh. He sees him at the end fall. Right? But tamut nafshi imap. He sees him. The end. How does he end his life? right? In the temple of Dagon. He pulls down the whole temple upon him, and he sees it, and he can't believe it. Why? Because it's written, we're going to see in the story of Shimshon, the angel tells his mother, V'hu yachel lohoshia et b'nei Yisrael mi Plishtim. He will begin the Geula from the Plishtim, but he won't end it. He had to be the Mashiach. Yaakov sees him as the Mashiach. He says, if it's not him, it's written in Bereshit. If it's not him, who is it? So I depend upon you. I have kiviti and mekaveh. I can only hope and pray that you will send the Mashiach, because he can't believe that there's somebody could be so great. All right, so that's number one. Let's see what the Gemara says about it before we the Gemara. So there were three statements here by Rabbi.
So, I'm a little confused. So Yaakov he sees this Ruach HaKodesh, and he also
sees Shimshon. He sees the person. He sees the greatness,
and he throws in the last request, Kiviti Hashem, because he's hoping.
No, and then he sees the demise of. He sees what happens to him, his demise, and then he says, "If it's not him, who could it be? How could this happen?" So it's beyond me. In other words,
I know, it's a statement of belief in Hashem.
Right, belief in Hashem, right. Only something beyond what I understand now. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. So the Rabbi Yochanan says, why was he called Shimshon? What does the name Shimshon mean? Shimshon. From the word Shemesh, of course. A small son, she called my little son. Shimshon. But actually, Rabbi Yochanan says, no, he was named after Kodesh Baruch Hu. Named after Kodesh Baruch Hu. Shimshon, just right as it says, Shemesh v'Chavaya, Shemesh Chavaya, Shemesh Magen Chavaya Elokim. Shemesh is a Chavaya. He's named after the name Chavaya. And why? Because of the great light that he brought down to the world. The great light. And also like the sun is the most independent, right? Of the most, as I said, most independent of all the planets, even though science talks about something else. In terms of the Torah, the sun is the main influencer, not just on this world, and far beyond, so far beyond the solar system. And he's named after the sun. The second thing he says is that he also comments. He says that when the Torah says that he will judge the Jewish people like Echad, he says, in my opinion, it means who's the Echad? Who is the Echad who is the greatest of the Shvatim?
Who's what?
Who was the greatest of the Shvatim? Which Rashi talks about that too. Which was the greatest of these Shvatim? Yehuda, of course, the king. Okay? So he says he's like the king. He's like David HaMelech. You understand? Again, we see the comparison between Shimshon and David HaMelech. Shimshon the Mashiach ben David. And also he says that at the end, you see at the end when Shimshon is blinded and they bring him into the temple, right, in order to make fun of him. And then he puts his hands, right hand, he's chained to the temple, and then he prays to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Zakeni Hashem ha'pa'am hazeh, haskeni v'zacheni ach ha'pa'am hazeh, and then he pushes down the temple, and it collapses on him. Man, this is a temple that had 3,000 people on the roof. It's written. In any case, it says that what is it in his prayer? He says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I never once asked for assistance. Everything was single-handed. I didn't have a secretariat. I didn't have helpers. I didn't have an army. You'll see him. He's a lone wolf all the time, right? And similarly, he didn't get married. at least to a Jewish woman. In the end, we see that his parents find him in the rubbles and they bury him near Beit Shemesh. Okay, so let's now take a look. Do we have enough? We have, okay, if it takes 50 minutes, is that okay? Yeah, all right.
Yes.
So now we're going to go to the Hebrew. And on page Taf Nun Beit, right? Where I marked it. I marked it here. Okay, I'm going to translate into English in any case. Shimshon. Now, let's see. This whole discussion is again based on 3 psukim. This mind-blowing. 3 psukim from Shoftim. When in the 2nd chapter, Shimshon again ventures into the Eretz of Plishtim. Now, where he goes is a place called Gaza, right? Interesting too. People think, the historians think, the Jewish historians, a real good one, think that Asa is really where Asa is today, and where Yitzhak Avinu dug the wells, that's Asa of today, because actually the Eretz of Plishtim was far bigger. It spread it had a territorial spread. It was much more extensive than is present Asa. So when he goes there, it's written, 1 second, find it. Okay, it's written. Okay. So it's the beginning of the 16th chapter where it's written. Vayelech Shimshon Azata. Shimshon goes to Aza. Vayar Sham Isha Zona. Vayavo Alea. This is his 2nd wife. He converts her. He converts all his 3 wives, by the way. Don't. Okay. Yep.
You're in the book of Shoftim.
Of Shoftim now, right? He goes. He sees a whore which she wishes to be with her, and he goes into her. And by the way, he converts her. Okay.
Why did you learn not to?
Oh, that's a good question. Because it says that he's looking for a pretext. Yeah, he's looking for a pretext to start war with the Plishtim people. He doesn't want to involve the entire Jewish people, so he's going to single-handedly do it by instigating, right? By finding a way to cause some kind of internal conflict with them. And it says, okay, so he goes to Aza, and it says, "Ooh, Shimshon came here," and they all begin now to circle around Aza, and they prepare an ambush for him all night, and they think that we're going to get him in the morning when he wakes up. Now, Asa, like all the cities in Tanach at that time, were surrounded by very high walls and a huge gate. Okay, and this is this is a story now. Upon this, we're going to understand what Shimshon is doing in Asa. Okay, and what Asa is. Let's go. So begin where I marked it in violet. Shimshon, when he comes to Asa, it's written, "Vayishkav Shimshon ad chatzi alayla." So he's in this woman's home, and he goes to sleep until midnight. Vayekam b'chatzi alayla, and he gets up at midnight, and he goes to the gate, and he holds on to the doors of Asa, which are huge. And the 2 doorposts. Imagine they say there was 60 amot, 30 meters high. Can you imagine the weight of them? This is stone. This is stone and iron. He puts them on his back, he puts them on his back, and he takes them on his shoulders, and he walks at least 20 kilometers eastward to the hills that overlook Hebron, and he places them on the hill overlooking Hebron. What's going on? So he begins now. This is the comment of the father Rebbe, who is a great Mekubal. His focus was on Zohar. It's not written here where he's basing upon it, but he has sources for this. What is Aza? Why the name Aza? It's referred to in the Torah as a leprous lesion, which is called Beheret Azah. It's a white lesion, but it's a very intense white. There's levels, right? Really, right. Remember what we said before? That's what the sages said that's what the sages said before this. They said this in the time of the Midrash, that they said the sages decreed that Azah was Tum'ah, unlike all the rest of Eretz Israel. So that's what he's saying here.
How do you, in English, I didn't understand the language.
It's a leprous lesion. A leprous lesion is what happens to a person when he has leprosy? He's tamei. This is when we have this leprous lesions with all degrees of intensity. This is the most intense appearance of leprosy. Okay, that's why it's called Azah, referring to what's called the lesion, the intensely white lesion, intense Azah. Okay, that's what he says. Now that's where he begins. Right. What is it? It's the lumatze of kedusha. You understand what Azah is? The absolute opposite of kedusha. The absolute opposite. Right?
What was it from the beginning of time? How did it get to be that?
Because that's how Hashem created it. Created it with that. We spoke about in the first session that there's all places like that. The earth too. As we know, there's good and evil in the earth, right? Also in the earth, I'm not going to go into what places are what, but you have holy cities and you have problematical cities like Shem, Azah. Okay, in any case, it's the lumatze of malchut of kedusha. What's malchut? Malchut is a monarchy, right? Hashem's rule. Rule over ourselves. It's exactly opposed to that. Defies it.
It was the place where Yitzchak dug his original well.
That's right. Exactly.
So what was he digging up? Was he digging up to take out like you would up?
No, see, okay, I don't want to go into that. There's another metaphor here, but I don't want to go into it right now what it means here. But specifically there, under there, we find that's where we find the model of the Beit Mikdash. The template of the Beit Mikdash.
The last class that you talked about, that we're digging, and then Hashem, the groundwater comes and meets us. So
right, but where is it? He's digging. He's under Azah.
Yeah, that's what you're saying.
Okay. Okay, so that's Ev Kedusha. And now, that meaning what? Go down where the next slide, where it's written, the beginning is Zot of the line, and it's written, that is why in Azah, there was a woman, the woman is a harlot, right? What's a woman? And where, we can understand it right away. What sphira, what are the sphirot? The 10 divine traits are related to the woman, are related to which one is the woman? Malchut, right. So this is the Malchut, the Klipa, okay? That's why he says the Isha Zonah, about in Isha Zonah, harlot, as it's written. And he saw there Isha Zonah in Azah. That's Azah. Azah is Isha Zonah. This is the Isha. Who is this? Meaning, this is the woman persona of the klipa, of the lumatze. And why? To what is she? What do we have in Jewishness? What's the model of Jewishness? Nachon Ishat Yirat Hashem Hitalel, about her modesty, right? About and not just for modesty, but it's written here. We're going to see that he gives another definition to it. Her modesty. She's modest. She's the exact opposite of someone who is a harlot, which is the height, right, of immodesty. This is Malchut of Kedusha. and she is in the Tokef of Azut, a place that's called Aza itself, right? Azut Moach, as meaning what? Boldness, the boldness and the impudence of the Umatzeh, as we see the Palestinian. And and this is like the woman, this is like the forehead of a brazen woman, which she's the opposite, diametrical opposite of the modest woman who acts modestly, who speaks modestly. That's, which is the model that we should be following. Okay, let's go down to the bottom. Ubasota, it's the same Gemara that we quoted before, Rabbi Yochanan, in that same page, it's written that the Gemara teaches us that the gates of Aza, the gates of Aza, the gates that opened up into the city of Aza, they were Shishim Amot, 60 Amot, which is 30 meters. And this is Lumatzeh of Kedusha. This is what the gates of the city, when they're closed, right? Closed city, the Kabbalah, the Torah sees it as the Rechem, the womb. This is the womb of Aza, the womb that's breeding the evil. The source of all the evil is coming out of this womb of Aza, the Lumatzeh of Malchut. Right? Right. Now, okay. So what's on the other side? We talked about the Malchut of Kedusha. What's the connection? Why is he talking about 60 meters? What's important about that? Because it's indicative of what constitutes the Rechem, the womb of Kedusha, which is the Beit Mikdash. The Beit Mikdash, when we talk about the Heichal, the building of the Beit Mikdash, right? What was its length? Right. 60 amah. The same thing. But here in that Beit Mikdash, this is the Rechem of Kedusha. All the Kedusha is coming out into the world, right? As we know, the Shekhinah, the light of the Shekhinah is going out into the world. The Kedusha, this is the womb where it's bred, right, by the service of the Jewish people. And this is positive against this. That's what Aza is, and that's what probably explains today the phenomenon that we see. That this tiny little tract of unimportant land with no national resources, with no brains, right? With no goodness. Why is it that this is the nucleus of, and all nations, many nations, our satellite, Aza, doesn't bother them what's happening in Syria. There can be mass murder, nothing. Aza. What? You understand? Because there's something in it. It talks to the evil within us. Now, what does Shimshon do? What do we see that he does? So he takes the gates and he puts them on his back. Now, we didn't explain before something about Shimshon, how Shimshon is bringing these two together and attempting to correct it, because it says in the Gemara that his shoulders were 60 amot wide. Not, I'm sure he didn't have. I'm sure. You know what 30 meters is of shoulders, right? He need. How he's. Can you imagine living on the highway with obviously with shoulder of 30 meters? That's not what the Gemara means to say. It means to say that he could bear on himself, in actuality, the weight of that. Not just the physical weight, the spiritual weight.
Yes.
And he takes it, puts it on his back, walks 20 kilometers to the east, up the mountain that overlooks Hebron and places it on the mountain. What does that mean? Okay. First of all, there's Hay'ala. Right? It's like the korbanot. He's trying to bring something now, trying to remove it, right?
Uproot it.
remove it, uproot it from its source, and then attempt to sublime it by taking it to the top of the mountain. But specifically, what mountain? A mountain that overlooks Hebron. What's Hebron? Hebron is the right place where the patriarchs are buried.
Right.
Who are the patriarchs? There's a beautiful phrase in the Zohar which explains who they are. What are they? Avot hen ha merkava. Right. The avot were like just the chariot of Hashem, meaning the vehicle. Just as a person, right, owns a vehicle. Well, today it's really getting a little bit out of hand, but generally, right? But the classic vehicle is something that doesn't move by itself. It doesn't leave the garage and go on a trip. It's only when a person gets in it and drives it. To tell you again, what we spoke about earlier about the avot is that they didn't move, they didn't speak, they didn't think. Everything was aligned with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Now he's going to take these people that have. We're going to go deeper into the Klipa the Plishtim. It's not just what their evil is actually, but there's no Kabbalat over there. You understand? They are the apps. They are annihilation of the idea of Kabbalat. And he brings them to a place and he makes it overlook, look down, see what Kabbalat is, right? And that's exactly the mission of Mashiach in this world. That's what's going to be Mashiach. We're going to change totally. But Shimshon attempts to do this.
I don't understand. He's taking the pillars, which are
He's taking he rips the womb, he ruptures the womb, right, so that there will be no more production of evil from there. Mm-hmm. And he takes the gates and he puts them up. And now, in order that they should experience the self-nullification of the avot. He brings it on a har. Har is
okay. So first of all, he's taking this thing that's the sishal to mind. He's bringing it where he's bringing it in order to
exactly to cause it exactly to be subdued and submit. So we're going to end there today.
Where's the mount?
I don't know. It doesn't say specifically.
So
now we can begin to understand what us is all about, right? And why after Melech Mashiach, when the Yalkut Shimoni says in the year that King Mashiach reveals himself, they go to war, and what happened after that? The Zohar tells us. The Zohar says the nations of the world will attempt to take pieces of Eretz Israel, as we said, the peace treaty. And then what happened right after that? Oslo. What does Oslo say? How are we going to begin the peace?
Go back.
Aza, Yericho, first. First, give them back. First, give back the Klipot Aza. So they get into the strongholds.
So this is why he had the Netzot to Mashiach. This is why he was potentially other self. He was Mashiach. So he actually. We know that we can't have Mashiach until call a sitach it's like the klipa has to be
perhaps not totally, but yeah, that's the way. Yes, that's
so he did that. He did that here at a certain point, but until it messed up. So he was
until it messed up. Very nice. Very nice. Okay.
She's very smart.
Thank you so much.
Okay, say that. You have a question?